The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I give the call to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today in support of the Australian War Memorial Amendment Bill 2014. Deputy Speaker, it has long been recognised that the Australian War Memorial is the nation's home of commemoration, reflection and remembrance. Charles Bean wrote in his immortal words in 1948, "Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made." Deputy Speaker, Charles Bean could not have said it any better. The War Memorial stands today as a legacy to those who served, their friends, their families, of all the servicemen and women, those that fell, those that came home, but most importantly as well, to all Australians for all time. It is right for us as a nation to recognise their loss and this enduring legacy. Deputy Speaker, it is for this reason that the War Memorial must be a place where all Australians are able to access free of charge, to be able to pay their respects, to honour the fallen, but it is also important to remember the legacy, to teach the foundations of our country to our children, our children's children, and for all Australians to acknowledge the war commitments that our predecessors have gone before us. As we enter into a period of remembrance and reflection like never before, as we enter the year of the 100th anniversary of the Great War, the centenary of Anzac, and the 70th anniversary of World War II, both taking place in 2015 and in 2018, and significant dates in between. I would like to take this opportunity to place on the record my sincerest gratitude to all our Australian Defence Force personnel, men and women, both past and present, and those that are playing an important role in shaping our nation's rich history. In 1915, recruiting committees were formed in nearly every town throughout Australia. In the central west of New South Wales, a movement began, which became known as the Gilgandra Snowball. Under the leadership of WT Captain Bill Hitchin, 20 or so men marched off to Sydney, gathering recruits along the way as they numbered out 300 by the time they reached Sydney. This was known as the Cooee March, and the Cooee March marched right through my electorate of Lindsay. Their example was soon followed by other marches from right round New South Wales and Queensland. The Waratahs, Kangaroos, Wallabies, Dungarees, men from the Snow River, Kurrajongs, Kookaburras, Central West Boomerangs, and the North Coast Boomerangs. They all relied on the support of the communities that they passed through, which was often very enthusiastic. The total number of men involved was only 1,500, but the marches attracted wide publicity and have encouraged fundraising and enlistment more generally. The commemoration of the centenary of Anzac is a reenactment of the Cooee March and is expected to arrive in the seat of Lindsay on and around the 8th of November 2015. These ex-servicemen who spent 25 days walking from Gilgandra to Penrith and eventually on to Sydney in time for Remembrance Day. If we are to pass on to future generations the story of the Anzacs who served at Gallipoli and the campaigns over the century of service, then we must ensure that these stories are available at no cost. This is particularly important for the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of school students that come past the memorial as part of their school trips to Canberra each and every year. Deputy Speaker, in speaking to the two RSL clubs that are within the seat of Lindsay, they have both provided statements which I would like to read to the House. From the City of Penrith RSL sub-branch, the President, Mick McConnell. The Australian War Memorial is to remind the community that it was built on the blood of our nation, and you cannot put a price on that. It is a monument to our Australian military history and displays a myriad of records and all types of memorabilia and community members to review and reflect on our history from beginning of our nation. Australians who went to war to help provide us with a free world. The collections of records, mementos, and collectibles and relics that are placed on display is paramount to all members of the community so that they can pass on their legacy to other family members and the memories they gained from their experience. People travelling from all regions of Australia who have already paid for travel and accommodation do not deserve to now pay for parking or entry into the Australian War Memorial, particularly those who wish to have access to the research centre where they can research their own family's military history. It is a place where it provides first-hand education for Australian school students and a place to enhance the development of teachers. The Australian War Memorial holds an abundance of unreplaceable artefacts, which is unique to this country, and they belong to all Australians, the taxpayers of this nation. Every family has a history of some other member or of their family having served our country and have lost their lives defending it. The Australian War Memorial is like a mecca to our Australian people, where it becomes a central location to pay homage to our fallen. When commemorative services and parades are conducted on the grounds, politicians and guests do not pay for parking, so why should members of the community, the taxpayer, attending these events have to pay? The new parking arrangements that were introduced on the 1st of July 2014 see an appropriate for 4-hour limit, but a restriction to those enthusiastic visitors. The government of the day has always provided funding, but maybe members of the council should look at other ways of funding the Australian War Memorial. His recommendations include to encourage organisations to become friends of the War Memorial, perhaps increase membership fees to Friends of the War Memorial, perhaps enhance content of the Australian War Memorial shop, entice more organisations to place advertisements into magazines, quarterly issues, I think. Actively seek more funds and regular donations by the way of additional sponsorship from larger business corporations, mining corporations, RSL clubs and alike. And finally, he recommends maybe a government policy introduced that all clubs and registered organisations present a small percentage of poker machine profits. I'd like to thank Mick McConnell from the Penrith RSL for his contributions. I also had feedback from Tony Fryer, the Honorary Secretary of the St Mary's RSL sub-branch, and he says, and I quote, "I believe that the members of the St Mary's ESO's St Mary's Outpost of Vietnam Veterans Association and St Mary's RSL sub-branch fully support the maintenance of free access to parking at the Australian War Memorial and free entry to the Australian War Memorial so that ESO members and the general public alike can continue to be exposed to the reality of Australia's past conflicts, Australia's rich military history and culture, and to truly understand the price paid by our forebearers in maintaining the freedoms that all Australians enjoy today." I'd like to thank Tony also for his contribution. Deputy Speaker, as you can see by the servicemen and women and the RSL clubs that I represent in Lindsay, it goes without saying, to keep the War Memorial free to all Australians is absolutely paramount. I would like to thank my RSL clubs for their support. I would like to also thank my RSL clubs for the work that they're doing to have a wonderful dawn service for Anzac Day. Both Penrith and St Mary's do phenomenal jobs, and in that vein, Deputy Speaker, I would like to commend the bill to the House.
I thank the member for her contribution. The question is that